I saw some people wondering who's the person who's going to talk about vacuum cleaners. Well, that's me. Um, First of all, I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you so very much for organizing the conference. I've learned a lot this morning. The food is incredible. I don't know if that's normal for the food to be that good, but I really thought this was fantastic. I will start the timer now, and stop on time. What I want to talk about indeed is what I call here Web3 and vacuum cleaners. And I need to start with a short story. And here's the story. This, as you will recognize, is indeed a vacuum cleaner. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because I checked and inside there is no blockchain, right? Now, the point I want to make, and we already have a fact, so we've made quite some progress in just 33 seconds, is that blockchain does not exist in a vacuum cleaner. Now, or not yet. And if we talk about Web3, and by which I would define as being all the products and services that functions on top of a blockchain, well, it actually exists in a digital ecosystem, which itself is embedded in our so-called real space, right? So now maybe we live in a computer simulation. You may have read about that. I'm not here to discuss this, but to the very least, Web3 exists and needs access to infrastructures that are already in place. And what's interesting to me is that we may want to discuss whether or not the entirety of Web3 is centralized or decentralized, put that on the spectrum. You could assess that for each project, and there is truth to that. But all you look at is the inside of Web3, but again, knowing that it exists not in a vacuum cleaner, but in a digital ecosystem with existing infrastructures, I'm interested in the legal implications that this may have. Now, I do have a working paper. I've put the QR codes. I love to generate QR codes, so you will see maybe quite a few. If you do, it's not yet published in the final version. If you do have comments based on the presentation of the paper, feel free to send them my way. Now, I want to be more specific when it comes to the relationship between Web3 and the digital ecosystem. And most specifically, I want to tackle in the 8 minutes that I have left, the relationship between Web3 and the tech giants, the big tech companies. Now, going back to complexity theory, what's fascinating to me at the very least is that Web3 and the big tech companies, they are co-evoluting, right? They are in a competition. And you see that indeed there is a fear from the big tech companies that Web3 may compete and take down some of their services or reduce the market shares. The Web2, the tech giants, they also need Web3. This is something that you see in the metaverse. Facebook announced that within their horizon, you will be able to import your own NFTs. Why do they do that? Because it's a way, at least that's my understanding of it, to say you can trust the company that we won't be able to take your NFTs away because indeed they are recorded on the blockchain that we do not control, right? Amazon, I don't know if you're aware of that, but in a couple of weeks, will actually launch its own NFT marketplace, right? So there is a need for Web2 to actually use some of the Web3 assets and features. But what I'm most interested in is where Web3 needs to actually access Web2, and as I call it here, technical and social infrastructures. And I'm about to be more specific on that. But if there is indeed a need to access what the tech giants own, this means that this may create possibility for those tech giants to actually abuse that need. And that leads to antitrust, right? Which is broadly defined the law of transactions between economic entities. So what I want to do is to give you some very concrete examples of where I see a struggle and potentially abuses, knowing that there are, to the best of my knowledge, no case being investigated by the competition agencies when it comes to that relationship between Web2 and Web3. But I'm here to argue that we should have a very close look at this relationship. If I start with the technical infrastructures, I just want to give you two examples here. And by technical infrastructures, I mean the ones that as a Web3 project, let's imagine a decentralized Airbnb, a decentralized Uber, or decentralized Get, you will need to access in order to function, right? Without this, you can't function and offer something and put it on the market. If you do so, most likely you will build your service on top of the Ethereum blockchain. Maybe you will use another one. It could be Solana, Cardano. There are a few examples. But just looking at the Ethereum, you see the numbers here. There are actually two ways for you to store the blockchain. right? You could do it what is called here residential, which means that I use that computer and I store a copy of the blockchain, right? That's one way. You see that it represents 30% of where people store the Ethereum. When it comes to here, the part that is entitled hosting, that means to actually put it on the cloud. And that's what most people do. And if you look at within the hosting space, you see that 65% of the cloud services being used is the one of Amazon, meaning AWS. So end of the day, 43%, and I checked the number and updated those numbers just a few days ago, of the Ethereum is being stored within AWS, which gives great power to AWS to change the terms and conditions to be hosted there and maybe potentially to cut access. And this is not just sci-fi. If you look at what happened to Solana, one provider, not AWS, another one, Etzner, one day decided to cut access to their cloud solution, right? Which created a big mess within the Solana network. So as I speak, the Ethereum relies on AWS pretty much to survive or at least to stay as efficient. Still looking at the technical infrastructure, we can talk Web3 all you want. All of them are using GitHub. That's, if you've never been there, a website that you may use to actually publish the code of your Web3 project and ask people to improve the code and potentially adopt that in a open source fashion. Now, who's behind GitHub? Microsoft. And if you look at what happened in a probably different case, the one of Tornado Cash, GitHub, for reasons that are related to cybersecurity, took down the code of Tornado Cash, right? So we see that GitHub is actually doing that on a regular basis. They will take down the code of something that is supposedly decentralized. And then the question is, can you function well? Maybe, but then can you access to your ecosystem and get to new updates? Well, it's much more complicated, right? So this gives power to Microsoft here to impact the survival of Web3. If I move to the social infrastructures, and by that, in just 3 minutes, what I mean is what you need to access for people to adopt your Web3, your decentralized Airbnb or decentralized Uber or Get. The first thing that you need if you want to really, if you are in the business of mass adoption, is access to the hardware. And who controls the hardware? Well, Apple, Samsung, LG, and a few others phone manufacturers. Now, looking at what's happening in the field of antitrust, you see that the French Competition Agency published an opinion a couple of years ago, and the European Commission is currently investigating Apple for not giving access to the NFC antenna. The NFC antenna is pretty much what you need if you want to offer a contactless payment solution. There are other ways, but they are non-efficient. So in practice, you do need access to that. Now, let's imagine I create a DeFi solution. It's an app. Somehow I managed to put that, in the App Store, but no one can use it to actually pay in a business in a contactless way. I'm not sure if people will start using this or will stick to the one that is very convenient, right? So you do need access to the hardware. And if not, well, potentially this may create an impact on the survival of your business. Another example is the one of what happened in Minecraft. It's a virtual world, also owned by Microsoft. By the way, I have nothing against any of those companies. What they did here is that they ban NFTs. Now, NFTs I would define as a right to access. It could be just that you want to access the picture, but it could be more than that. We could say, well, if you've been part of this conference today, you get an NFT, and with that, you can access, the building, you can access reimbursement of the cost, and so on and so forth. So you can create something more out of the NFT. And Minecraft said, well, you can't do it within my ecosystem. So again, you reduce the value, the social value of NFTs. One last example. This is here a screenshot that I took of the terms and conditions of Apple. And what you see here, and I've put the link if you are interested in exploring that in more details, is that Apple is telling you that you can maybe trade NFTs using an iPhone, but you can certainly not use NFTs to unlock features within the app. The only way by which you can unlock new features is to pay, and payments before the DMA has to go through Apple, and they take 30%. So I can't say, well, I'm using an app, I have an NFT, and therefore I will unlock new features. So again, you see that Apple can decrease the social value of those NFTs. Final example in 20 seconds. That's the one on advertisement. Are you aware of any blockchain, crypto, Web3 project without a Twitter account? I'm pretty sure that they exist, but they're very rare. And what you see here is a tweet by the former CEO of YouTube saying, well, we've made a mistake. We took down some Web3 related channels, and it clearly is a mistake, and we are very sorry about that. Now, the question is, do they have a good reason why they are doing it? And this might be the case, consumer protection, cybersecurity. It may also be that they try to slow down the adoption of blockchain. And this is an example that I like. Facebook for years said anything that is crypto related is prohibited. You can't advertise that. And when they announced that you would be able to use NFTs within their virtual world, within days they say, oh, and by the way, now everything crypto related is okay. So the consumer protection reason actually seems to be a weak claim in some cases. So the final message is this: antitrust and competition law is actually Web3 friends, right? And it's not just something that may prohibit you from doing something. And you could be a crypto anarchist all you want and rely on the idea that code is law. I would say this is true, but it's also insufficient. And here, you may want to use the law and again, try to protect your Web3 project and increase mass adoption that way. If you have questions, of course, we have the panel, but you also have my email address and Twitter. If you're on Twitter, feel free to come at me. All right. Thank you very much.